Nope, it didn't do it.
There's some other extra button that needs to be hit to do the countdown.
I thought I knew what button that was.
I always feel like it's a countdown to another countdown anyhow, and therefore not really necessary to do this.
No, that's not it.
20, 19,
oh, I just
18.
found
it.
Hey! Here, I'm going to do it anyway. Hey, everybody. For those of you who joined us right away when we went live, that's just a little button on showing you behind the scenes that there's lots of little things that Kiki does normally that I don't have quite the finesse that she does for doing it every week. We are without Kiki this week. She is about to get on an airplane or is currently on an airplane. I don't know. But she is off doing fantastic things. Justin and I are holding down the fort, and this is the part of the show that does not end up in the polished audio podcast. So
a lot of the show, in fact, doesn't end up. See, normally when somebody does these podcasts, they sit around and they say a bunch of stuff and they go, what do you think? I don't like the way when we said that.
I'm going to tighten that up. Oh, the dog was barking in the background for that one.
I forgot to say something I meant to say. And then they redo it a couple of times. And then they, splice it all together. And that's the polished podcast.
It's like, I slipped over that word or the name of that institution. I'll scrub that and I'll re-say it polished in the No, we're not doing
none of that. What you get is raw, unadulterated, us talking live. Lost art of live broadcast.
It's as if you're at like a science conference in the cocktail hour and you happened across us just chatting about the latest findings in science over
and you say you have a question, but it turns out to be much more of a comment.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, Justin's walking around in the different papers, the poster presentations going, I have a question. Now, did you know that... Never mind. Okay, so we're actually going to start the show now. I was just buffering to let people know we're getting started to get the juices flowing.
We should do the countdown. Should I
do the countdown again?
Let's do the countdown now that we're ready for it.
No.
Okay. Ready.
So I'm going to start the show now. We're going to do the kind of polished show. And then at the very end, we will have a little bit of an after show as well. All right. So are you ready, Justin?
I am ready.
All right. So I'm going to say the things. You're going to do a disclaimer. I'm going to play the music. I don't have the fancy switchboard. Apologies, everybody. All right. In 3. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 882, recorded on Wednesday, June 29th, 2022. Smells like fresh science. Hi, everybody. I'm Blair Bazdarich, and today we are going to fill your head with chimps, smells, and wood. But first...
Disclaimer. In 1873, a federal law was passed in the United States, the Comstock Law of 1873. The law made it a criminal offense to sell or distribute materials that could be used for contraception or abortion, or even to send information about such things through the mail. The American Medical Association spoke up in favor of the law, as a collection of bright-futured old men who could point out a fair portion of the lady parts on a chart that was missing some really important ones, by the way. They felt that not only was abortion a danger to women, but also that reproductive control raised the risk of, and I quote, a woman overlooking the duties imposed on her by the marriage contract. And while contractual ignorance of marital lady parts and misogynistic laws restricting the rights of women may not yet be a thing of the past, the important thing to remember is actually I'm at a complete loss for finding upsides on this one. What has occurred is nothing short of barbaric, will incur real and immediate suffering, worse generational outcomes, has no reasonable place in a modern society, and the decision is entirely lacking in credibility. That said, we now turn to a subject with far greater integrity than a legal opinion. This Week in Science, coming up next. I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science? Good science to you, Blair.
Yes, it's me, Blair.
No Kiki. We're Kiki
No,
free. Kiki, we're
no
running without
Kiki tonight.
Without the net and the producer and the
We are
parental
unchaperoned
guidance
this
Woo.
evening. Happy day of science to you, Justin. I'm glad we have some science to bring everyone today to kind of reground ourselves in what has been a strange week. We have lots of good science though tonight. Kiki is absent, but we will be rejoined by her very, very soon. On this week's show, what do I have? I have the chimps I mentioned before. I have singing and dancing. I didn't even talk about that one yet. And insect bites. What do you have, Justin?
I've got doing away with sunlight, doing away with water, things that happened in a cave long ago, and where have all the beneficial bacteria gone?
Where have they gone?
It
Well-
sounds very dire, but it's not as dire as all of that sounds. Well,
Yeah,
some of
just
it
take
is.
a poop pill, you'll have it back. It's fine. Anyway, so as we jump into the
May
show,
not
I
be
can't wait to
helpful.
jump into all of this and focus on science for a couple hours here. It's gonna be great. As we jump in, we want to remind you that you can subscribe to TWIS as a podcast on your favorite podcast platform. That's YouTube, Facebook, Spreaker. What else did Kiki used to say always? Stitcher, Apple. It's all the things. You can listen to it all sorts of places. You can watch us after the fact. You just want to rewatch that whole episode of TWIS after you watched it live, right? And we publish those episodes every week. Just search for This Week in Science on the internet somewhere or go to twis.org. But now, Justin, I have are you a musical person? I feel like I can't recall.
While driving.
Okay.
I am the most musically adept person. I can sing on key, and then as soon as the car stops and the engine dies, I lose it.
Okay, so this is about multitasking and music. So this is kind of related. So also this is a study about the brain. So Kiki, I know you're listening after the fact. I'm sorry. I wish you were here to help me understand this. But this is a study from the Center for Music in the Brain at Aarhus University. And looking at how your brain can handle some juxtapositions of multitasking and not others. So if you tried to count right now a measured 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, while simultaneously clapping the rhythm to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, can you do that?
No, because it's in a different time signature, right?
Okay, but if you did the opposite, if you tried to clap 1, 2, 3, 4 and hummed the rhythm to Sgt. Pepper's, could you do that?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
That's what all musicians do when they tap a foot. They're tapping 1, 2, 3, 4, while they do other things that are off rhythm with a musical instrument or with their voice. And so based on that, you would think you could switch it back and forth really easily. And I remember from trying to learn how to play the drums on a drum kit that trying to do different rhythms with different appendages was nigh impossible for me. It was very difficult. Some people could figure it out, right? But what they wanted to look at in this study was why some rhythms can be taken on by some parts of your body and in relation to others, and others cannot. So what is happening here? Why can we do it in one direction but not the other direction? And so what they found was that there is a hierarchy in your body related to your voice, your hands, and your feet. The voice, hands, and feet are organized into a hierarchy that determines which combinations of rhythm and beat are easy and which are difficult. And they also found that this applied across musicians and non-musicians. They took 20 professional musicians, 22 amateur musicians, and 18 non-musicians. Everyone was right-handed to try to remove a variable there. They used rhythm and beat in an assignment for them to have different combinations of voice, hand, and feet performances for rhythms and beats simultaneously. They found that there is a hierarchy in the body with 5 levels: left foot, left hand, right hand, voice. It's easier to perform musical rhythm and beat simultaneously if the beat is on a part that is lower in hierarchy than the one performing the rhythm. So that's why you can tap your foot and sing a different rhythm. That's why you can clap and sing a different rhythm, but you can't do the opposite. And so this is interesting because it breaks a theory about how the brain works and how the expectation was that it was a hemispheric issue, but it doesn't appear to be. It appears to be this body-based hierarchy. And yeah, go ahead.
So there's part of that makes kind of sense. I mean, when you go running, for instance, I feel like you don't pay a tremendous amount of attention. Left, right, left, left. Oh no, I'm falling. Like it's sort of it's given a bit of autonomy to keep that cycle of left, right running, the feet movement going, operating a bit autonomously. You don't really have to concentrate on it. But clapping, I think, does at least require me to concentrate very hard to clap slightly off of the beat each time.
Yeah, I think I was just trying to think about it in my head too, but
that's a good place to start.
That's a good place to think about anything is in your head for sure. No, I was thinking about the example where you had to clap and then sing Sgt. Pepper's and vice versa. And yeah, it is. I tried it when I read the story, and I could kind of do it. And I do have a theory that if they got people who played a drum kit, they would be better at it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's a certain amount. There's a certain amount. Like if I look at, like, I guarantee you, the drummer for the Ventures, is that the first drummer that came to my mind? But if you take a drummer, David Grohl, I think that's a more current. The kids will know who that guy is. Drummer, musician, singer, guitar player, does all the stuff. I feel like they have got to be at a point when that's not a problem. I think picking it up, I think doing this mostly with non-musicians, I would expect to see that larger effect. But you're saying this was even amongst musicians that they were able to.
Yes. So if they measured the museums against the museums, if they measured the musicians, oh Lord, I can't talk and broadcast at the same time today, apparently. When they measured the musicians against non-musicians, the musicians did better overall. But within the individual of the musician, they still had more ease with these things based upon the hierarchy. So yes, a musician, particularly somebody who can do the drums or something, might do better and do very well, but it would still be more taxing on the brain and more difficult to go backwards in the hierarchy, is kind of the point of the study. So I think this needs a much bigger sample size. 60 people is not really enough, in my opinion, to decide how a brain works, but it is definitely a very intriguing start. And as you mentioned, it makes sense that the feet would be a kind of on autopilot, hands would be next, and then vocal anything is going to be the most complicated because we speak. So so that's definitely going to be the most complicated thing that we do with our body, is what's happening with our tongue all the time when we talk.
Yeah, outside of, I'd say, maybe the last third of this show at times, I don't find myself speaking automatically. I don't feel myself, that's very much a concerted effort thing that you think and then do, as opposed to the rest of it. Because, you can't really run off subject, I guess, is what I'm, or out of context.
I mean, you certainly, when you're an autopilot, you can accidentally run to the wrong place because you're used to going that way. I don't know. Anyway, Justin, tell me some science.
Oh, good grief. Let's see here. There is, if you have not noticed, a thing going on that is global warming.
Huh?
And one of the things global warming is doing away with is freshwater reservoirs, and doing so apparently at an alarming rate. The Lake Mead outside of Las Vegas, which I've actually been to a few times, but most people have never heard of until it was in the news recently. Lake levels there have dropped the height of the Statue of Liberty. This created an Easter egg hunt of sorts of dead bodies being found as it recedes, which is also troubling that there's dead bodies in a freshwater reservoir. But I guess that's just nature.
It's near the mob from Vegas.
Yeah, it's very close to Las Vegas. It's on the outskirts a little ways there. And it is the largest water reservoir in the United States. And it is shrinking dramatically. Many places experiencing above normal temperatures, below average rainfall, ever-changing climate. We need to get a better grip on what's happening to the water that we count on. And published in Nature Communications, there's a study led by Hulin Gao, the associate professor at Texas A&M University. The researchers there created a global lake evaporation volume dataset, GLEV. It leverages modeling and remote sensing to provide the first long-term and monthly time series for 1.42 million individual natural lakes and artificial reservoirs worldwide. Some of the things that they found from their initial study here: the volume of water lost to evaporation is increasing with global warming. Evaporative water loss from reservoirs has been increasing at a rate of 5.4% per year. The volume of loss currently is 15.4% larger than previous estimates, and the quantity of reservoir evaporative loss is equivalent to 20% of the global annual consumption of water use. So this is, and then they've got what they're calling, of course, reservoirs is both artificial and natural lakes that people draw water down from on a regular basis to wet communities. Now, we've talked a little bit about this before, and I get a little pernicious about the whole water conservation efforts that are aimed at consumers. There's a state of California was asking people, quite often we'll do this. It'll ask people, hey, don't water on these days, or, don't wash your car because we're in a water shortage and da. But the consumer, the spraying the driveway down to wash it, washing your car, watering your lawn, doing your garden, your showering, your bathing, your dishes, and all of those things within the state of California, at least, which is a good 40 million people, it accounts for about 10%, 10 to 11% of the water use of the state. Massive amounts go to other places. So But it's very interesting that they're finding such a large and increasingly large loss from evaporation. The city of Los Angeles tried to do something by putting these like rubber or plastic black balls in one of their reservoirs to try to shade it from the sun. In retrospect, they may have just added a huge dose of microplastics
Right.
to the water supply. Might be the only thing they accomplished. But this does make the case for at some point needing to move the water supply underground
Mm-hmm.
somehow to sequester it underneath for at least not the natural reservoirs, but at least for the man-made ones. Perhaps that could be a better option than just leaving it out in the sun to evaporate away.
Well, in the case of Vegas and LA, two options that you give there, naturally very dry places. So even before climate change, these things are going to have huge evaporative loss if you were doing above ground storage. So
Mm-hmm.
knowing what we know now, it would have been safer to do underground water storage in both of these situations. But
And that is one of the things, right? In California, it gets discussed all the time is transporting Northern California's water to
Mhm.
Southern California by creating a 600-mile underground tunneling system. Because right now, the water is
It's
just
just
put
open.
into
Yeah.
and it's put into concrete channels and just sort of flows down and evaporates all the way along as it
Oh, yeah.
goes.
The aqueduct.
Yeah, but also, there's so much that's going to be it's such a dwindling resource. It's such a thing that people are going to be forced to focus on. Yes, the entire Southwest, the entire state of Arizona, if you fly over, it's all swimming pools and golf courses. It's
Right.
ridiculous. It's in the
Yeah.
middle of a desert. These are all things that people are going to have to address very soon. Although the export of water through farming and manufacturing that makes up 89% ish of the water usage is really where it needs to start, where the focus needs to
Mhm.
start. I don't
Yeah.
think nobody should feel bad for having a garden that they water. for
Right,
instance.
right. Yes,
You're
no,
not the problem. You're not causing the problem, and you're not contributing to it either by watering your garden. You're an insignificant. It's not even that it takes a community kind of the thing. Even the whole community isn't the problem.
we need grass and lawns to be devalued as a society. That is
I I
important.
I agree to a great extent. I'm
Yeah.
not a big fan
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
of
Anyway,
everybody having a patch of useless grass in the front
yes.
yard. But if you
We're
wanted
we're
to put a
using
vegetable
water
garden,
we're
do it.
using water like it's endless, like it's an endless resource, and on
And,
top of that, we are causing climate change, and those two things are eating themselves, and
and
so
it, it
it's a
should be
compounding problem.
it should be an endless resource. But this is one of the rare things I'll take for the water thing. John Oliver on his I think just the last show did a workup on water. Specifically, I think he talks about the Colorado River a lot and how they've been divvying up a pretend portion of the amount of water. They've been divvying up an amount like, okay, here's the river, here's how much water it is, and here's what different states are going to be allotted from that. But that number is for a number much greater than the actual river produces.
Right, sure.
To begin with, just to start the problem off on the absolute wrong foot to begin with, and then it goes sort of downhill from there. But it's a good watch if you're interested in the water issue.
Oh my. Um, well, I need to use water to keep nice and clean so that I smell nice.
Mhm.
And that way that I smell, making sure I smell nice every day, helps me make friends. Did you know that?
Oh well, that's why I don't have any friends then.
Yeah, yeah. No, actually, it
Ah,
turns out that your own personal fragrance could influence who your friends are.
other smelly people.
Yes, indeed. But what do you mean by smelly? So we know that there are lots of different animals, and particularly mammals, close relatives of ours, who depend upon smell to identify each other and assess each other for all sorts of things, for illness, for where they are in their mating cycle, for what they've been eating recently, for all sorts of things, right? So hormones, lots of different things can be released by smell. Sometimes microbiome can be influenced by smell. A lot of the time, actually. So anyway, all that to say, other animals do it. Why don't we? Well, as you might expect, I'm about to tell you, we do. A recent study tells us that people who smell similar are more likely to hit it off as friends.
Oh,
Since people seek people who are similar to themselves a lot of the time, the hypothesis was that humans might subconsciously smell each other and estimate body odor similarity to judge compatibility, not as mates, but as friends. So, to figure this out, they collected samples from pairs of same sex non romantic friends who described themselves as having clicked at first sight. That is to mean like it was friendship at first sight. They had a sense of friendship that formed immediately before they knew too much about each other. Just kind of clicked. They found 20 pairs of these friends. It took a long time to find these people and find people who are willing to do the study. I'm going to tell you what it took in a second. Half of them were male, half were female. All of them were aged between 22 and 39 years old. In order to take out as many confounding variables as possible, the participants of the study had to follow a strict protocol, which included avoiding pungent foods, no garlic for you, and sleeping away from their partner. They had a domestic partner and pets in a clean cotton t-shirt that was provided for them. Then they were put into a Ziploc bag and tested with an electronic nose, which that's just a fancy way to say it was sensors that analyzed chemical composition, right? So,
it was the shirt that was put into the plastic bag.
Yes,
Not the,
yes.
Okay.
Not the person.
Ah!
Yes. Yeah. They found that the odor signatures of friends that clicked right away were statistically more close of a match than odors between non-friends. So they were like, all right, this is a good start. I love when studies do this. Next step. What do you think the next step was, Justin?
Oh, gosh, I don't know.
Smell tests, of course. The team recruited human smellers. They devised a set of tests to check the validity of this result from the t-shirts in the plastic bags. The human smellers are presented with 3 odors, 2 from a pair of click friends, as they called them, and 1 outlier. They successfully identified the pairs, rejected the outlier, said these 2 are similar, this one is not. Those were the friends. Then they wanted to kind of shoot down the possibility that the reason they smell alike is because they spend a lot of time together. Because they're testing people after they've developed as friends. They've self-identified as close friends. So how do we make sure that they didn't just, because that was my first thought, was like, oh, you're spending a lot of time together. Maybe you share a beverage. Maybe you do these other things, hang out, sweat near each other. You're sharing microbiome. You're going to smell the same, right? But how did they figure this out? So next, they recruited 17 strangers. They had them interact with one another in a test called the mirror game. They stood half a meter apart so that they could subconsciously smell each other. And then they were asked to mimic each other's hand movements for 2 minutes without talking to each other. So they were just like trying to do the same thing at each other, very silly, but they weren't allowed to talk. They found
This is also the first day of mime school.
Sure, yes,
really
absolutely.
Very similar.
Mm-hmm. They found that the closer people's smell were to each other, the more they reported liking each other, understanding one another, and feeling greater chemistry between each other. Yes, this was 77% of cases were mutual clicks, as they called them. So they selected each other, 77% of them. And 68% of those were predicted by scent. So this suggests that human same-sex, non-romantic friends smell similar to each other, more so than would be expected by chance. And of course, one of the researchers says, we think our results imply that we may also be more like other terrestrial mammals than we typically appreciate. The age-old,
Yeah.
oh, we're animals.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing, is because that is very logical, and there has to be a majority of human and absolutely hominin history where we relied on our olfactory senses to navigate, to get clues from the environment, to tell what was going on. But in this day and age of all the different artificially smelly things
Yeah.
and all that sort of stuff, it doesn't seem like, because nobody talks about smell in this way. You don't go to, it's like, oh, what did you think? Oh, the place, gosh, it has this smell. Nobody makes smell art.
So
I guess a perfumer would disagree. They're making smell art all the time, but there's no
yeah,
smell museums. I don't know.
so
It's not
I
a
would be
sense that
interested to see if somebody been friends for a really long time, if they use different products now and their smell is significantly different than it was before. Has that changed the relationships? And were you click friends with people 20 years ago and now you're click friends with people that smell completely different?
Yeah.
So I think that's what would be interesting, is to see,
Yeah.
because depending on the products you use, I can tell you right now, based on the 5 products that are in my hair, because I have curly hair, that probably dominates my smell.
Yeah.
And so, that's not all natural smells. That's not how I would be if I was out on the plains as a wild animal. I wouldn't smell that like that. So it's definitely, and some people have different hygiene habits, and all these things kind of play socially into how they smell in a way that just your average mammal does not have. We have all these tinctures and things. So it's a little more complicated, but regardless, the nose knows
Yeah.
when it comes to romance, as we've discussed, but also friendship.
It just occurred to me that, like, this is about a month ago. I'm sitting next to somebody, and I just, but I didn't know it was. I was all of a sudden I smelled sandalwood, like a big hit. It's like,
Ooh,
I was like, oh, that
fancy.
smells good. Is that you? And it struck up this guy, and I really liked this person. We had this great conversation. Now I'm thinking maybe it was just because they smelled like sandalwood.
Do you smell like sandalwood normally?
Yes,
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, there you
yes,
go. Huh.
yeah. That's like that was, and I didn't think of it at the time, but yeah, I have, like, that's the one ingredient, that's the one smelly ingredient that you can find in, like, soaps
Yeah.
or deodorants or shampoos or whatever, that I'm like, oh, that's the good smell. Everything else is
Yeah.
terrible.
Well, and I'm just thinking, I don't really know about your smell profile because I've met you
We're
in
not
person
in
less than
person,
10 times probably.
and it changes. It changes depending on whether I, got
Right.
out of it. It's like, oh, I'll go and take a shower to start the day. Or if I go, I showered, what was it, a couple of days ago, I'll be fine. And I don't have to go to
Right.
work today. I'll just, sit around the apartment
Uh-huh.
smelling bad. But, a
Sure.
musky odor.
Musky,
This is
sure.
another thing. This is a whole other,
Mhm.
and I'll
Mhm.
stop subtangent because this all gets cut out anyway.
Yeah. Hi, Kiki.
So, yeah, I know. So smell preference.
Yeah.
Who likes a musky smell that is in male colognes and deodorants? Who likes a very perfumey, flowery scent in a lot of female perfumes? And it seems like if you're putting on this cologne to attract the other sex, as people do when you go out to a club, just stand outside of a club as people go in, and you'll just get wafted by too much of one thing or the other. It's just, oh, why did you have to? But if, like I always had this idea that my theory would be, if you wanted to attract the opposite sex and they liked perfect. You would go Chanel number 5 and you'd be like doing this. You would want to smell like the thing that they like and would put on their body.
Well, but
And
okay,
not-
so Justin, hold on. I have to
It's
derail you
always
there
confused me that
because
that
there's a
name
difference
play.
between friendship and courtship. So
No, I'm talking about courtship.
Right.
Yeah.
Friendship, similarity. Courtship, difference. In
Yeah.
courtship, you want genetic difference. And in courtship, when they've done all these smell tests for courtship compatibility, it's always been who smells the most genetically different from you is what the result ends up being. And so it's a completely different metric. Completely different.
Okay, well that helps a lot. That actually solves the age-old question of why men don't wear girly perfume and women don't wear musky lumberjacks.
Well, if you're me, you just put a little vanilla. You smell like it's perfect. Okay. Justin, tell me your other beginning of the show story.
Oh, was it my turn? Oh gosh. Okay. Which one does it say there? Because I got a couple of choices.
It says plants without the sun.
Photosynthesis. We need the sun for photosynthesis. You can't have plants without photosynthesis. That's a technological feat that plants have evolved to do, turning water, carbon dioxide, energy from sunlight, electrons, turning into plant biomass, like tomatoes and avocados and everything else that we eat that's a vegetable. Or fruit even. This process, according to researchers, is very inefficient. There's only about 1% of the energy found in sunlight ending up in the plant. Yeah, you do better, science, than good old nature. Scientists at UC Riverside and the University of Delaware have found a better way to do it. Oh, wait. Bypassing the need for biological photosynthesis altogether, creating food independent of sunlight by using artificial photosynthesis. The research, published in Nature Food, uses a 2-step electrocatalytic process to convert carbon dioxide, electricity, and water into acetate, the form of the main component of vinegar. The food-producing organisms that they apply here then consume acetate in the dark to grow, combined with solar panels to generate the electricity to power the electrocatalysis. That's a little bit cheating, using the sun again. A hybrid organic-inorganic system could increase the conversion efficiency of sunlight to food up to 18 times for some of the foods. But it's not like, my first reaction to this was like, okay, great, but we don't have a sun shortage. We don't have a lack of sunlight that we need to make it more efficient.
No, but so you were saying so this is using UV panels, but they're saying that it's more efficient. So if you used a solar panel to charge the UV panels, you'd grow things faster and bigger than if it was under the sun?
PV panels, photovoltaic panels.
Okay. But is that what they're saying? Is that it's more efficient than using the normal sun?
That they're using more of the energy captured in these solar panels than in this process. Now,
so we do have, well, we don't really have a food shortage. We have a distribution problem, but still, it's if that can help reduce, I guess, cost and make things easier to grow where there's not.
So there's really some neat applications.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. So this is quoting somebody, corresponding author Robert Jinkerson, who I think has a wonderful name. I like that name. I've never heard it before. Jinkerson, a UC Riverside assistant professor of chemical and environmental engineering. With our approach, we sought to identify a new way of producing food that could break through the limits normally imposed by biological photosynthesis. So in order to integrate all these components of the system, they used something called an electrolyzer. Was optimized to support growth of food-producing organisms. Anyway, let me jump down to the experiments. They had they were able to use this acetate-rich electrolyzer to grow things including green algae, yeast, fungal mycelium, that's mushrooms. Producing algae with this technique is approximately 4-fold more energy efficient than growing it photosynthetically. Yeast production is about 8 18-fold more energy efficient than how it is typically cultivated using sugar extracted from corn. That's really interesting. That's got maybe some very intense biotech applications. We were able to grow food-producing organisms without any contributions from biological photosynthesis. This technology is a more efficient method of turning solar energy into food. But again, we're talking, we got plenty of sun. That's not a wasted or finite resource. But here's where it starts to get really interesting. That quote, by the way, was Elizabeth Hahn, doctoral candidate, Jinkerson Lab, co-lead author of the study. They can do this on Mars.
Mm-hmm.
They can do this on a space station. They can do this. You can grow this, use this system underground. You can build an agricultural center this way in the basement of a large building in downtown San Francisco.
My bunker. I see.
Yeah, it says we found a wide range of crops could take the acetate we provided to build into major building blocks an organism needs to grow and thrive. With some breeding and engineering that we are currently working on, we might be able to grow crops with acetate as an extra energy source to boost crop yields, says Marcus Harlan Dunway, also doctoral candidate Jinkerson Lab. Yeah, so getting rid of the sun, we have more control over the growth process too, so that if this synthetic farm is in a place that's getting hit by droughts or global warming is creating very bad problems with the weather, whether it's increased cloud coverage or no rain or whatever it might be, this creates a controlled environment to be able to continue to grow at a sustainable fixed rate so that you know what your agriculture is going to produce. Again, the dark. So not everybody wants to eat mushrooms and algae, but they were also able to do, I think, I don't see here, but it was tomatoes and maybe even avocados, which is that's plenty right there.
I'd live off of mushrooms. That sounds great.
Yeah. So as many things are going underground, we may need to put our water underground and our food sources underground as well.
How do they taste?
Huh?
Would they taste any different?
No, of course not. It probably tastes better.
Maybe.
Probably tastes better without all that.
I think about how
sunlight on there.
Soil quality impacts plants and how they taste. And if it's growing in this acetate medium, it's all kind of uniform, right? So I don't know. It's just something I thought about.
I don't know. So they don't actually mention. Maybe you just hit on the thing. Maybe that's why they don't bring it up. No.
They're like, shh, if we don't bring it up, no one will notice. No. It's I don't know. I think it's interesting. It does seem like a disruptive, to use like a tech term, right? Like a disruptive method for growing plants. It's interesting.
Here's that list I was looking for of things that they investigated that they were able to grow in the system. Cowpea, tomato, tobacco, rice, canola, and green pea were all able to utilize carbon from acetate when cultivated in the dark, grown in the dark.
Mm-hmm. Did you say cowpea?
So, yeah, it's PEA.
Okay. I got so confused. I was like, we were just talking about cowpea last week to fertilize plants.
But we were also talking about cowpea last week. Was there's a virus that attacks the cowpea?
Oh my gosh, this is confusing. Guys, call it something else. Call it something else. Anyway, okay, I get it. It's fine. Growing plants in space on Mars, in a bunker. I love it. Let's do it.
In the middle of an urban area where you don't have the acreage to dedicate to an open area farm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can grow plants without the sun.
Love it. All right. Well, if you just tuned in, you're listening to This Week in Science, where we're just done with the quick stories halfway through the show. I'm Blair Bazdarich. That's Justin Jackson. Dr. Kiki is off this week. It's just the two of us. If you would like to help support TWIS, get a friend to subscribe today. Just tell somebody about our little show and have them plug in. Join the fun. Justin, do you want to talk about any COVID news this week, or can we skip it because there's enough other bad news going on?
So the only story I was going to bring, and I didn't bring it, was about a cat that gave a veterinarian COVID.
Okay.
And it was apparently
but you didn't bring that.
I didn't bring it because it's not a study.
Right.
And it was, I'm going to talk about it because it's not a study. You can't take the one-off. The doctor's like very sure that he got COVID because the cat sneezed on him while he was testing it. The cat did have COVID.
Right, but he also went to the grocery store recently.
Well, also the entire family that has the cat, that brought the cat in, also has COVID currently.
Oh, so, interesting.
Why? I don't know. And it's a one-off thing. Mm-hmm. So that's why.
Yeah, definitely debatable. Sample size of one. No causality. Interesting.
But just to be safe.
No, don't say it. Yourself. Moving on. It is time. Oh. Where's my music? It's time for that part of the show. What part of the show is it, Justin?
Is it time for Blair's Animal Corner with Blair? What you got, Blair?
I have so many fun stories. Okay, so first of all, I want to talk to you about wood.
Okay.
I know it's the animal corner, but I want to talk to you about wood. Specifically,
trees are organisms. I guess they're not animals.
They're not animals, but animals need them. And I want to talk about wood in streams. So this is a study out of Oregon State University looking at how wood is treated in streams by land managers. Now, for a very long time, before the 1970s specifically, pretty much the whole time there were white people in the United States before the 1970s, land managers, recreationists, and the public saw wood in rivers and they thought it kind of like dirty and messy, undesirable. They thought that it would kind of create log jams, create flood risk, impede navigation and transport if you're trying to use the stream as a way to get from point A to B. Just looked like debris. They wanted these clean, flat, glistening rivers. And so the way that land managers, you're seeing where this is going, the way that land managers took care of these, they removed deadfall from rivers. As is often the case, when we walked on the scene, we were like, I'm going to fix it all. Turns out there's a reason that these things are that way. There's also a reason that the original stewards of this land, the Native Americans, understood these things, left them as they were, right? This is a conversation we have in relation to fires and all sorts of other things related to land management. If you want to learn about land management, talk to the original land managers, right? But anyway, since the 1970s, land managers then realized, actually, pieces of wood in streams are important for fisheries. It's an important piece of fish habitat, creates shade, creates cover. It slows down water, does all sorts of things to help fishes survive. And so they started putting large pieces of wood back in streams for fisheries. But this recent Oregon State University study wanted to see how wood in streams impacts terrestrial animals. How does that impact birds and land-based animals? We know that it impacts fish, but what do these pieces of wood do for them? You can probably guess. They looked at a year of footage for motion-triggered videos that they set up near multiple large log jams in a creek just west of Corvallis, and they found the hidden role of wood in streams. What did they find? What do you think?
I don't know. That's good.
What do you think they're using the wood for? Birds and land mammals.
Places to land to get a drink of water.
Absolutely. What else?
More else. Place to hang out while they're bathing.
Sure. What else?
Places to go for a swim.
Well, so they don't need the wood to swim, right? Because there is the water. What?
But you want to dive off of, you got to
Right.
jump off of the thing.
So the number
because
one,
the food source collects around there.
that is a big one. But the number one use of log jams is movement. They have to traverse the streams.
Oh, okay.
So they're using the wood to get from one
Bridges.
side to the other. They observed 40 species during that period. Mule deer, raccoons, kingfishers, chipmunks, deer mice, western gray squirrels, opossums, robins. They observed all sorts of animals. Movement was 68% of the occasions. Rest, 18%. Just go on a nice float. Food handling and eating, 9%. That was one of the ones that you brought up. And so they saw all this diverse use of this space that is essential to survival.
Yeah.
So that means this is important information for land managers moving forward, because there is this additional value of restoration projects that involve placing wood back into streams. So yet again, here we are going, oh, we messed it up. Let's put it back like it was. And so, so we're putting wood back in streams to provide not just space for fisheries to thrive, but also bridges for animals, feeding platforms, rafts for resting, any number of things. Yeah. And so this is a really good example of examining conventional wisdom and finding evidence to see why nature had it like that. The Earth's been around for a long time. Streams and logs have been around for a lot longer than we have. So if they're working this way, there's probably a good reason for that.
It's also interesting because a lot of those immigrants that came to the United States that then decided to, fix the rivers came from places that had heavily polluted rivers and waterways. I mean, it was a real thing. There was die off, fish were dying in the rivers in Britain around urban areas because it was just horrible.
Right. Well, and if you think about rivers in an urban area, think about the Thames in London. You don't see a lot of logs floating in the Thames. It's because you're not in a forest.
Yeah.
That's why it's all clean and clear, even though it's pretty gross, I think. But it appears that way. It appears pristine because there's nothing to fall in it. But stuff falling in there is part of nature, turns out. You know what else is part of nature, Justin?
Oh, a lot of things. Would have a big list if I just started.
Yeah. How about getting bit by an insect?
Oh, yeah. That's the part. That's one of my less favorite things about nature.
Yes. Well, University of Bonn in Germany, researchers found it very important to discover how hard insects can bite. Yes.
Some more than others. I gotta give them that. That is some of you don't even notice. You go, oh, look, I have a mark. Something must have bitten me. I don't know what it was because I didn't look in time. And then other times, it's like they're gonna take a limb.
Right. And so I also want to make sure before I go any further to remind everybody that there's a difference between bite strength and pain. Those things are distinct. There is actually a good amount of data, thanks to some crazy scientists who didn't mind getting bitten and ranking bites and stings on a pain index. We have quite a bit of data on how painful certain bites and stings are. But that is not always a direct relationship with how hard they're biting. Sometimes it is the way they bite. If they pinch, it has to do with venom. It has to do with all sorts of kind of different factors that figure into how painful they are. But there is hardly any data available on how hard insects bite. That is important to know because there's a whole bunch of different morphology when it comes to insects. They have different types of mandibles, different musculature, different head shapes, and all of those have evolved to meet different challenges from their environments. Sometimes it might be advantageous to bite hard because biting hard might save their lives if they are using it as protection. It also might directly relate to what kind of food they eat. But if they don't need a hard bite, it might be better to evolve a softer bite because it has a lower energetic cost. The more you use muscles, the harder you bite down, the more energy you're spending. And so the bite force of an insect actually has really interesting ecological implications and conservation implications. So these researchers wanted to develop an apparatus to test insect bites. They hold an insect up to a sensor. It defends itself by biting down on two metal plates, and then they transfer the pressure to a crystal. The crystal generates a load-dependent voltage that is transmitted to a laptop via an amplifier. And so they have these differently sized interchangeable bite plates. The system is battery powered.
It's kind of like one of those grip tests or those love meters that you'd find in the old-fashioned arcade. You'd grab the thing and hold it, and then it would and tell you how your date was going to go.
Exactly, yeah. Hot stuff. Here, I wanted to show you a picture of this apparatus, but it's really hard for me to do both things at once, so I'm going to vamp. Here we go. So here is a beetle, a stag beetle, biting the metal plates of the sensor. And so, again, this thing is battery powered, so they can bring it out to the field. And I love this. For stinging insects, they didn't want to get stung while they were holding the insect. So they have a vial that can attach to this thing so that the whole insect is in a vial except for the head and mouth parts, which protrude from a little hole. Then they can poke it up at this metal plate. Usually when you hold an insect up to these metal plates, they're like, what's coming at my face? Bite. But if they don't bite right away, then they just stroke the insect heads gently with a delicate brush, and that just kind of irritates them into biting. So it's not invasive, which is great. You can pick an insect up, measure their bite, and put them right back down in the wild. I love it. But yeah, so from this, you can extrapolate information on what they eat, potentially what predators they're defending against, and conservation-wise, if a particular food source is disappearing, knowing what an animal is adapted to eat can help identify replacements. So that's also really important. But yeah, I think this is such a cool, innovative way to study something that hasn't really been looked at before.
Yeah, that's pretty neato.
Mm-hmm. Insect bites. And last, I have a story that I know Justin's very excited to talk about.
Yes, this is, I think, my favorite story of the week even.
This is a story from University of Kent and University of St. Andrews, and it is a story of chimpanzees digging wells. So talking about water storage underwater. This is a one-off case that I'm just going to kind of tell the story of. So this is not any sort of empirical study. This is not something that's there's a hypothesis being tested. This is something that was observed that is wild, that requires further research now. Mm-hmm. So this is in the Waibiric chimp community of the East African chimpanzees in Uganda. There was this chimp that was introduced to the community called Onyofi, and she was a young female who arrived in 2015. She was immediately very good at digging wells. So the expectation is that perhaps she grew up in a well digging community. We don't know. She just kind of showed up, started digging wells for fresh water. Since then, several other young chimps in her community, in her new community, and adult females have been seen digging wells, but no adult males.
Yeah, but this is right. This is no. They're just gonna wait till the well is dug and then.
They've used
exploit.
them. The males use the wells. They just don't dig them. Yeah.
But see, that's the thing I love. That this one shows up with this skill, this technology, this practice that it's gonna dig down and get at some of that water that's underneath the soil for the fresh water, and the rest start picking it up. They watch, they go, oh, that's a cool trick. Didn't know you could do that. And now they're mimicking the behavior.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so there's a few very rare instances in the animal kingdom of animals digging wells to access water. But usually that is in a very arid or desert region. This is in a rainforest. This is the first time it's ever been seen in rainforest chimps. And what's really interesting is in a lot of cases, they are doing this near another water source, really close to open water. So either this water is better filtered and they know that, or what I think is the more likely option is that it tastes better. The water tastes better, and so they dig for it because they have ample water accessible to them, but they will wait diligently while Onyofi is digging until she's done and then go in for drinks. They'll actually, what's really interesting is the males will wait. They'll wait patiently for her to dig a well and drink before they go ahead and drink from her well, which in chimp culture, it would make way more sense for the male to kind of like shove her aside as soon as she's done and then take a drink. But they're like, no, she's our well digger. We have to treat her well.
Whatever the well digger wants.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so she's been carefully watched by both young chimps and other adults. So this appeared to be a novel behavior when she showed up. And what they really want to know is what is going to happen in the next generation? What's going to happen when these young males, because young males have learned to dig wells from her.
It's just the old ones that haven't bothered to learn new tricks.
Right. Are the young males, when they grow up, are they going to continue to dig wells? And how will information continue to be disseminated? Are they all going to teach the next generation after this how to dig wells and use this new strategy? And I think aside from this just being a really cool thing that happened, and a really cool example of how smart chimps are and animals are in general, this is, I think, a good reminder that if we understand how new skills are learned within an animal community, we can actually use that to our advantage for conservation. So, for example, if animals are from an area where water was always prevalent, and as we previously discussed in the show, water sources are drying up. If we can teach wild animals how to dig their own wells, will that help their survival in the time of climate change? And by teach, we mean, like transplant an individual who knows how to do it, and they can teach each other and all that good stuff. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, that's such a. That's not. It's not an intuitive technology. The only thing I guess I'm trying to think of what I've seen that does that, and I'm thinking it's. I think elephants. elephants dig out a well in an arid place, I think, to get to the groundwater. I think I've seen that. Gosh, but I don't know what else can really do that. But it's. I want to know where's this other tribe she came from.
Yeah,
Where's
I
the
know.
other
I
group?
want more information about that. They honestly might not know.
Yeah.
Um,
Because it'd be interesting to see if they're still, or if the reason is their water source is full of predators
mhm.
that hang out there, and so they're just afraid to go to their water source. And it turned out we'll just dig our little wells here instead of going over there. I like the filtered idea. That makes tremendous sense too, because that's probably going to be a lot. That's the most filtered water in the world. Actually is stuff that springs up from underground and is considered pure spring water. It goes through all that. Interesting.
Yeah. So I
Very
think
smart.
Yeah, this is a very cool example of another way that apes are really smart. Um, and I know Fada in the chat room asked, is it possible that these chimps have interacted with humans and saw humans digging wells and are imitating that behavior? It's possible. Again, we don't know where she came from. So I have no idea if that's something that she was taught from a human or from other chimps, or it is, if she came from an arid region, I think it's very possible that that's just normal chimp behavior where she comes from. So I don't know. More study is needed, as is often the case.
Yeah, and it could have been a completely accidental chimpanzee discovery, digging out a termite mound or something.
Oh,
And then
absolutely.
going down far enough to hey, if you keep going, you get to water.
Yeah.
What I thought was interesting that you didn't touch on is that they had crafted metal shovels to do the digging for the well. That's the part you left out. I thought that was the shovel and bucket technique that they used.
Oh yeah. Well, chips and tools. They're good little tool makers. That's what's terrifying about them. Anyway, that's all I got for the animal corner tonight. Hey, if you're interested in a TWIS shirt or mug or another item of TWIS merchandise, usually with animals on them, head to twis.org and click on the Zazzle link to browse our store. Now, Justin, what science do you bring me this evening?
Oh, I don't remember which one I did next, but I think it's going to be the cave story.
The cave story.
The cradle of humanity is in Africa. This is a long time ago when the first hominins started to show up. About 84 years ago. No, it was way before that. But about 84 years ago, a cave in South Africa was discovered to contain a rich history of early hominin fossils. It's actually it's just one-stop shopping for an anthropologist there. In one area, there was fossils of early Homo. This is the earliest of the human line, be it ever so winding, dating back 1.5 to 1.8 million years. In another spot in these caves is stone tools and later versions of Homo, along with Paranthropus, which is a distinctly more ape-like group of early hominins, was also there around the same time. These date between 1.1 and 1.6 million years ago. So we have this nice transition from early Homo to kind of more modern Homo, and even some of the side by side or possibly interminglings there as well. In yet another area, there was discovered Australopithecus africanus, the most ancient of all human species, dating back from about 2 to 2.6 million years. So there's now millions of years of evolution here in this one cave. As hominins evolved, so did their technology. And the latest discovery is thanks to an evolution in technology and tactics. Previously, the Australopithecus in the cave system was dated in relation to the calcite and the flowstone. It was presumably covering some of the fossils and material. And this is sort of typically a kind of thing that is done when dating really, really ancient sites, fossil sites like this. You can't just test the fossils themselves to get a date that's that old. So very typical of ancient dating techniques. It's not always the direct object that you wish to date that gives you the range, but there's something else in the environment, something that covers it, layers of soil and a specific type of growth the rock. Like you can get some of that calcite that they looked at. One of the techniques that they use is when water flows and creates these calcite, these deposits inside of a cave. It brings the uranium with it, but leaves the thorium behind, and so you just have a half-life countdown clock of uranium at the site. Things like this. There's all sorts of things that they have to use. New research presented in a paper published in the journal TWIS reevaluates the age of these Australopithecus, because one of the things that they had kind of been aware of or become aware of is that the flow in the calcite that they were measuring is not as old as the rest of the cave. So they found a new technique. The new age is based on radioactive decay of rare isotopes, aluminum-26 and beryllium-10 in the mineral quartz. According to the University of Witwatersrand, Professor Dominic Stratford, Director of Research in the Caves, the new age ranges from 3.4 to 3.6 million years, indicating that hominins were contemporaries of other early Australopithecus species, like Australopithecus afarensis in East Africa. So that's like Lucy, that's like the oldest house. So this has sort of been a thing. You have East Africa where they've got 3.5 million year old Australopithecus, and then South Africa has 2.5 million years. So there's 1 million years of Australopithecus running around, to the point that the Australopithecus in South Africa was thought not to be a human ancestor, because the early Homo species showed up, they thought, too soon in relation to that. So it must have been sort of a dead ender, but that also happened to run into the evolved hominin later on. Now, with this new dating technique, the Australopithecus gets pushed back 1 million years in South Africa, and now fits actually the rest of it. So even though it's a radical pushback in timeline, it's actually it fits the rest of the puzzle pieces that had been laid out over time. So it's not really a radical discovery in that sense. It's still a new evolving techniques, better observation, and we get more accurate dating.
This is why we keep this stuff, man. Like this is I report on this kind of stuff at the Animal Corner all the time, that like these museum specimens we've had for 100 years were identified as the wrong species, and actually it's this other thing, and we learned this item about it because we have whale pelvises from the past 100 years from a bunch of different species. Like it's just, as science gets better, we're going to hone in more and more and more on what actually came before us. And it's, I love that it fits the story so much better. That's great. That means we were on to the right track there.
Yeah, and it was also just sort of interesting because in this one cave area, you see all these sort of landmark points of evolution showing up.
It was a popular cave.
Yeah, popular cave. It's a great place to hang out, apparently. Until it wasn't. Until you got caved in and became a time capsule occasionally.
And now it's a great place to hang out again if you're an anthropologist.
But it looked such a linear transitional location for it to not have been that linear. And again, this is also not far from Naladi. This is all braided stream anyway.
Mm-hmm. It's all everything.
And my final story of the night is also looking at. Oh gosh, we're gonna be taking this. We're going back to the chimps and other
Great.
primates.
I love
So
it.
the
Take me back to the chimps.
human gut is full of beneficial bacteria, assisting our digestion, our immune system, nervous system, our cognitive health. Even some of these passengers on spaceship Earth, although they're not really passengers, are they? They're more like the crew. Some of these microbial crew members on Spaceship Human have been associated with our guts since before humans existed. We share certain gut microbes with almost all primates, suggesting then that they first colonized a common human ancestor with even before hominins, then a common ancestor with all primates. Humans have lost many of these helpers found in other primates and may still be losing even more as we move from rural urban environments to cities and change our diet and get involved with antibiotics and the like. Those absent gut microbes, what were they doing? How do they affect human health? Were they good? Were they bad? Well, they just not needed anymore. So the microbiome is, we're talking bacteria, fungi, viruses, other microscopic life that inhabit an individual. That individual can be a person, a plant, a worm. Human microbiome, of course, we talk about the gut. The more microbiologists study these gut microbes, the more they link bacteria to functions of the hosts. In humans, again, that's immune system responses, allergies, whether or not we have an allergy. They interact with our brain. They affect mood, cognition, things. Andrew Moeller, evolutionary biologist at Cornell University, and colleagues reported previously that human gut microbes are very similar to those in other primates, suggesting the presence of predates the evolution of modern humans. But in follow-up studies, they found that human gut microbiome has become less diverse than the gut microbes of our current primate cousins. One study found 85 microbial genera, such as bacteroids and such, in the guts of wild apes, 85, but just 55 genera in people in the United States, living in U.S. cities. Splitting the difference, people in less developed parts of the world would have between 60 to 65 of those bacterial groups. So there's a shedding of the familia microbial as we become more urbanized and probably go to a very different, less farm to table, I would assume, diets.
Less dirty also, don't you think? We hyper clean everything. Don't you think that would impact our
Well,
microbiome?
it depends on what you mean by clean. So all
There's a
your
lot
food
less
is
alive in processed food than
in
there is
processed food. Yes.
in fresh food.
Yes, but if by defining clean, you're like, I don't want any chemical additives
Oh,
in my
well,
body.
no,
I don't want
that's
any
not what I mean.
plastics in my body. Well, I mean,
I'm
this is
talking about
also clean.
bacteria. That's what we're talking about, bacteria.
Yeah, I
There's,
know, but there's other things that are
Sure.
getting into the body that you might consider clean, like microplastics. Oh, clean microplastics. Let me get a lot of
Yeah.
those.
That's
You get a
exactly what
bunch
I'm saying, is that you're talking about, there's a lot less creepy crawlies on our food, which is actually probably the crawlies are good for us. The bacteria, we
Yeah.
need some of those.
Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, all our food is still grown in manure.
Yeah,
So,
but we don't eat so much raw meat, is the thing.
some people do, but yeah, I don't know that people think, who's eating the raw meat? Who are these raw meat eaters who you're talking
Apes?
about? Oh, yeah, they don't cook their food yet.
No.
You gotta have a conversation.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. The microbiome, right?
Yes.
It's all we cook our food. We
Yeah.
flash freeze our food.
Yeah.
We
You know, it's funny.
chemically treat our food.
Yeah. You know what was funny though? I was literally not thinking about the intersection of modern human versus chimpanzee when you were saying these things. I was thinking of city dweller versus rural dweller.
Sure.
Because
Mhm.
city girl, because I'm still a little raw when city girl assumed my little town of Davis, a mere 70 miles inland, was just chicken coops and wandering cattle. I mean,
Yeah.
that was
Just take
that
a
was
bite out
actually-
of one that passes by.
I'm like, we don't eat raw meat just because we live 70 miles from the city. We also have paved roads and even a street light got put in a little while back.
But you're in my microbiome, not that different.
Yeah, probably not very different. So yeah, they're pointing to like, oh, there's all these things. There's the urbanization. There's changes in diet, antibiotic use, stress, hygiene. They point out better hygiene possibly contributes to the loss of human gut microbes. So there's all these factors. Moeller and colleagues looked at genetic markers and broadly identified what genera of bacteria and other microbes were present. Now they've taken a closer look at exactly what microbial species have gone missing from the human gut to try to compile the full genomes of the current gut microbes and our closest relatives. And he says here, you can tell what went extinct by looking at what's in other primates. So they collected all this. They got chimps, bonobos themselves sequencing the DNA feces to see what's there. They also accumulated other samples of gorillas and other primates from researchers. They even used some ancient DNA from human populations, and basically they say that humans have lost 57 of the 100 or so branches or clades of microbes currently found in chimps and bonobos. It's about half the groups. They were able to estimate when some of the human gut microbes disappeared. A few were lost thousands of years ago, and some have disappeared much more recently, with, again, city dwellers having lost the most. Already, efforts are underway to collect and preserve microbes from people who live far away from cities, like Davis, California. You're 70 miles from San Francisco, in case they have conserved some of the missing microbes. Kyle Meyer, a microbiologist at UC Berkeley, argues such losses are not necessarily a problem. Maybe we don't need them, he points out. But Moeller, the researcher who conducted this study, says, we are really doing some scary stuff to our microbiomes, he warns. So depending on what opinion you have, it's not a big deal. It's probably just stuff we didn't need, or now this is why we have asthma. This is why we have so much stress. This is why whatever it could be. There could be like all sorts of, there could be microbes that we used to keep us healthier. Or they might have just made it so that we could drink puddle water without getting sick. But by collecting these, seeing their interactions, testing it, learning, and, very important, preserving and identifying and preserving the missing members of the current human microbiome. We can, the researchers plan to be able to see what their effects were, whether or not they are beneficial, and then you could, of course, create a probiotic based on a bonobo.
Yes. Give me it. Please
give
me
a bonobo probiotic.
The bonobo probiotic. I don't think they had tummy aches as often as I do. Give me it. Oh, boy. All right. Well, Justin, do you have any final comments?
No, that was it. And we didn't finish though. You still got stories, right?
No, I'm all done.
That's it. Did we? Oh, look at that. We are right at a tight 90.
Except we started late, so we're actually under time.
So we'll just
It's all
so
right.
what we do is we do the end of the show
Yeah.
really
Extra
slowly.
slow? Yeah, yeah. That's
We'll
true.
take our time.
Well,
Vroom,
I
vroom.
hope you enjoyed the show tonight. Justin, do you have any final comments you want to add?
Nope.
Okay, great. Well, shout outs to Fada for his help with social media and show notes. Shout outs for show notes. Gord for manning the chat room. Identity4 for recording the show. Rachel for all of the assistance. Especially thank you very much this week, Rachel, for all of the editing assistance. And I'd like to thank our Patreon sponsors for their generous support. Let's see if I can do this as effectively as the great Kiki. Thank you to Teresa Smith, James Schaefer, Richard Badge, Kent Northcote, Rick Loveman, Pierre Velazarb, Ralph E. Figueroa, John Ratnaswamy, Carl Kornfeld, Karen Tazi, Woody M.S., Chris Wozniak, Dave Bunn, Vegard Skevstad, Hal Snyder, Jonathan Stiles, aka Don Stylo, John Lee, Ali Coffin, Gaurav Sharma Ragan, Derek Schmidt, Don Mundis, Stephen Albaran, Daryl Mazurczak, Stu Pollock, Andrew Swanson, Fred S104, Sky Luke, Paul Ronovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles, Jack, Brian Carrington, Matt Bass, Vote Beto for Texas, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenflow, Jean Tellier, Steve Lessman, aka Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Dana Pearson, Richard, Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Remy Day, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, Artyom, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, David Neighbor, Eric Knapp, E.O., Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Steve DeBell, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul Disney, David Simmerly, Patrick Pecoraro, Tony Steele, and Jason Roberts. That is a lot longer than the last time I read Patreon supporters, and that is awesome. Thank you for all your support on Patreon, all of you. If you are interested in supporting us and joining the crew, you can find information at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. Remember, I don't know if we even brought it up last week, there will be no show next week. 2 out of 3 hosts will be in limbo. Therefore, no show next week. But we will be back on Wednesday, July 13th at 8 Pacific time, broadcasting live from our YouTube and Facebook channels and from twis.org/live.
Want to listen to us as a podcast? Just search for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe too.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to stories will be available on our website. That's at www.twis.org. And you can also sign up for a newsletter that I will at some point write.
You can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twisminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twis.org. Just be sure to put TWIS somewhere in the subject line. Otherwise, your email will be spam filtered into a chimp well.
That's right. And nobody wants to go down there looking for that. It'll get all soggy. You can also hit us up on Twitter where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jackson Fly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address or a suggestion for an interview, please let us know.
We will be back here the next week.
Yeah, in 2 weeks.
After 2 weeks. Hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. This week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. Cause it's this week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 I've got one disclaimer and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten you.
That's the show. Justin ran away. But I'm still here. He'll be back soon. I hope everyone enjoyed that. I hope it wasn't a little too short. Surprisingly, I felt like it was going to run long, and then it kind of just all wrapped up, which was nice. Nice tight 90 for Kiki. How's everybody doing tonight? She said to the silent chat room. I'm going to open Discord. I think that's what I'm missing. I need to open my Discord buddies. Yes, Fada, we're not trying to go under 90. Kiki needs 90. She needs a full 90. Not too much, not too little. What do we have in the TWIS Discord today? I have not opened this in quite some time. Oh, yes. I don't know if any of us want to know what our smell profile is. That might be a little too revealing. It's very subjective, I think. Whether someone is what their smell is all about. I don't know. Gord's very tired. I think I'm tired too, Gord. It's just everything. I'm tired. Aren't we all? Yeah, I do wonder also what that cave was for. You're right. Was it a dating cave? Was it a nightclub? That's why all the skulls were in there. Really, it's from a mosh pit, right? Gotta get all those head injuries. Anyway. Is everyone doing good tonight besides Gord, who's tired, and me, who's tired? There he is. He's back.
And we're in the after show.
We certainly are.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Justin? I'm going to sit down.
How am I doing? Oh, what kind of a question is that? How am I doing? Yeah, just fine. Just fine. The weather here has been hot. Muggy. It's been hot and muggy in Denmark.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It was muggy today, actually, here.
Yeah, actually, it very much reminded me of a hot San Francisco week, where you still have all of that moisture in the air from being next to the ocean and all, and then there was no wind, and just it felt hotter than it was, I think, because it's a sweaty heat, which coming from 70 miles inland, that's all it is. It's a proverbial desert, basically, where agriculture thrives. Not used to the mugginess of it all. And it's also I think partly, even though it's Denmark, it's very warm because the sun is shining on the Isle of Denmark. Season here all the time.
Yeah, when does it get dark there? When does it get dark?
I think it gets. I don't know what it is now. I want to say it's like 10 o'clock, and then the sun comes back out at like 3:30 in the morning, somewhere around there. It's
Do a Google of it.
Yeah, you should Google it. I haven't really. It just doesn't seem like it's ever. The sun is ever
10 p.m.
10 p.m. goes down, sunset.
4:30 a.m.
4:30 a.m.
That's wild.
Yeah, it really is. And that's I mean, and it's light at 3:30. I can say that. Like, it's already, the glow is there, the birds are waking up, doing their whole early morning thing before even 4:30. So it's very strange. Yeah. How is everything? How are you doing there? And how's everything back in the States? Do you guys keep everything?
Oh yeah, everything's doing great. I don't know what you've heard.
Nothing.
There wasn't like a major downfall of modern society in the last 7 days or anything. Don't even trip about it. Yeah, it's upsetting. I don't.
Well,
pretty disheartening.
The only thing that I really, my main comment that has been stuck in my head is that this is what they said they wanted to do for a really long time.
No, this has been the plan since the day that verdict was passed in the 70s. It's been the plan since day one.
Well, but it hasn't. I mean, it increased considerably over time, the amount of effort and focus, because the one thing that also that you have to when looking at why changing a precedent like this is such a big deal is these particular justices are saying not just that they have reviewed it and talked amongst themselves and decided that this should not be a precedent anymore, that this case was ruled on, but they're also disagreeing with all of the previous justices who have upheld it. So they're saying we're not just a group of 4 out of the 9 or 5 out of the whatever, 6, was it 6-3? I don't even know what the final.
I think it was, because it was a super majority. Yeah.
It's this 6 versus 20 other previous Supreme Justices.
It's that energy of someone who walks into a job the very first day after that workplace has been operating for hundreds of years, and they go, nah, I'm gonna change all this.
Oh, it's definitely new coach, new manager syndrome. Like you get the reins, and you're like, now we're gonna run things the way I want it. Actually, we hired you to maintain.
Yeah.
Thing.
Well, not to mention they all said under oath that they wouldn't do it, and then they did it anyway. So that whole situation.
Yeah. So there's lying to Congress is involved, right? There's also when there was a provision in NAFTA that prevented California from was it MTBEs? What was there was an additive to the fuel that was supposed to burn cleaner to make the fuel less polluting, that was getting added to fuel in California. And it turned out that this particular additive, I think it's MTBEs was the chemical, was eating through the hulls of the fuel containers underneath gas stations and creating leaks. Good. So California's like, oh, we got to get rid of this. But under NAFTA Chapter 11, there was this provision that if you pass a law or change your laws that negatively affects the contracts that already exist in a business, you would be liable for not just the losses, but future earning potential losses too. That you'd be on the hook for all of the losses of the company going forward based on that thing that you changed. It got used there, so California ended up phasing out slowly over a very long time, as opposed to just banning right away like they should have. It also had some weird implications for mortuary services and the way that they operated. Like, there's all these weird places where this law would show up, where even though you passed a law that changed the use of formaldehyde and wood or whatever it was, companies could sue to keep those things there. Otherwise, or you'd have to pay them an exorbitant amount. So part of me is like, well, okay, this is a change in law that is forcing changes in contract. It is a contract then to raise this child. That's a contract that you have to enter into as a parent, not just to be pregnant and give birth, but then to raise this child once it is here. This is a contract that the government's legal change is opposed. They should be on the hook for every dollar, for every penny of that child's food, clothing, health care, education, everything, which it already should be. That's one thing.
Don't start with shoulds right now.
Right.
That's
But
a long list, Justin.
But that's one way I would at least try to attack the law. But it's still a right. It's infringing on the Fourth Amendment, the right to privacy.
It's a medical procedure.
Infringing.
You can't. There are so many situations where people will be in real medical peril, and they will be denied health care. Mm-hmm. Aside from the fact that it should be 100% a woman's choice, anyone with a uterus should be able to make that decision for themselves.
Right.
That all aside, it's a medical procedure that saves lives.
Yeah. And so the folks, we talk about, we get, this gets framed a lot as a religious. And so if you are going to say that there's a religious objection to abortion, then the separation of church and state, just right there, should prevent that from being law.
Justin, the Supreme Court just allowed prayer in schools. So don't even, it's none of it. It's none of it's there.
None of it's constitutionally should be upheld, right? So there's that as well. Also, we have to look at the other side that's supporting this. We're a big, we didn't really get into it, but part of the support for the Comstock law, working on ways to limit abortion and contraception, and they ended up being laws against divorce that were being passed as well. A lot of that momentum that was anti-abortion was also replacement theory, was also white supremacy, was a much bigger spoken about reason for opposing abortion back in the late 1800s than it is today. I'm telling you, it's still a motivation today. It's just not the part they're going to speak out. They're going to say it's the religious objection and not the white being pro-white supremacy. But that is still very much part of why this is.
Oh, for sure.
And then this is arguments that are casting aside the fact that we have decided to limit rights for a specific category of people.
But we already do that, Justin.
Right. And I think
we do that for lots of groups. So this isn't new, but
yeah,
it is scary when things are taken away. It's frustrating when you can't get rights for specific groups. It's especially frustrating when it's suddenly taken.
Yeah.
I think that's the part that's especially shocking, is like when you can't pass reforms to help with racial equality and to help improve the financial situation of oppressed people and all these certain, fix policing and all these things. When those things aren't passed, that's frustrating. And it's infuriating in its own way. But I think this took so many people by surprise because this was a win that was taken away.
A right that was taken away, which is not something
Yeah.
that you're used to having happen
No.
as an American. That's usually are going to, and now they're focused. They're going to keep going. They're not done. You're talking. Yeah, prayer in school came right after. Now you're going to get limitations of other rights for other select groups, and they're going to come for everybody eventually with all this until we throw out the Supreme Court and just do away with it and realize it was a bad idea.
It would have been fine if everyone was actually impartial, if it wasn't a politicized office.
Oh, also in the fact that, we got, what is it, 4 or 5 of the justices now were put in
by people who didn't win the popular vote?
Their popular vote for the election.
Yeah.
And laws that are being used to block by states that don't have a population large enough to sway an election on a national level as well, but still get representation. It's not a true democracy in the United States. And I've been answering questions here who Europe cannot believe the draconian authoritarian.
I want to hear more about that. I'm not hearing the discourse from other countries. We don't get that here. I want that. I want to hear.
It's not fun discourse. I have to keep saying.
I know it's not fun, but I feel like that's what's missing. Is we need to be publicly shamed by other countries. Yeah, but
there's so much I have deflected that shame immediately. Like, well, I'm from California, so this is my thing. Is you have to realize the United States is just united under an umbrella like the European Union. But, you probably have a few European countries that don't have the same ethos.
But if they did this, they would be sanctioned, is the difference.
That or just, but they wouldn't have the sway over all of Europe. And that's the weird thing that the United States has done is it has given the Senate the ability to do things. They have the Electoral College, which is such that's the first thing you learn about when you're studying civics and politics and how it all works in the United States, where you go, that doesn't seem right or fair or democratic. That's the first clue that you get that something wasn't designed correctly here. You have this thing called the Electoral College that actually chooses a president 3 different times in the last 20 years over the popular vote, over the will of the people. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the United States needs to fix that to call itself a democracy.
Well, and then you have justices and Congress people making decisions that don't mirror the actual opinion of the people that they're supposed to represent, which is also the problem. So you're supposed to be a representative government, but it's not representative because they're doing whatever they want.
And so, but that's okay. But that's okay. That should be fine. It really should be. You shouldn't just. That's what the Supreme Court is kind of supposed to be. It's supposed to be the heavy that says, I know you politicians want this law, and I know the people voted for you, and the people might even be in favor of it, but it's not constitutional. It's not something that we can have as a law because it harms specific groups and infringes on their rights. There's supposed to be that bulwark that sort of defends the Constitution. What we have instead, though, is this is now we have political ideologues.
But Justin, who made the Constitution?
Wait, hang on. Before you get to who made the Constitution, I know, it was a long time ago. But but you have people who are also supposed to be updating it. The justices are supposed to be impartial to the political sort ofness, but are supposed to reinterpret for the modern era that we live in.
Right, but they're reinterpreting for the modern era to a certain extent based on the will of the people, because go ahead.
Oh, well, okay. I don't think it's necessarily to the will of the people. See, I think that was the whole point of them having lifetime appointments and being immune from politics. And we've had Supreme Courts that got it right and got it wrong, but were, had a vigorous debate over these as core issues of law. Now what we have is people who've thrown that out. And that's what we've always tried to prevent.
Justin, I'm gonna push back on that. I think you're totally wrong. I think the will of the people, the majority of freedoms that we have gained in this past century, is because the majority has demanded it. It is a new freedom that has been demanded by the people. That's what I mean, is that there is a time when the majority of people go, no, this isn't right, fix this problem, and it gets fixed. And the majority of people did not want any of the things that happened this week. Right. And that's what I'm saying, is that when you're talking about awarding freedoms that have been ignored in the past, that is usually because of public pressure. It is not because a Supreme Court decided, you know what, now we're going to change this thing.
Well, but to an extent, it's not that in the past that they've decided to, but a case comes up that isn't necessarily popular. Like, I don't know.
If the civil rights movement didn't happen, then Brown versus Board of Education would not have happened. Loving versus Virginia would not have happened. Yeah. It's because of the civil rights movement. It's because of the will of the people.
Yeah. Yes. But it's the reinterpreting. It is reinterpreting for the modern age, always. But there's also a lot of laws that I think could have gotten struck down a long time ago. The one we were talking about, the Comstock laws. There was also an anti-indecency aspect of it, where the guy was going after and actually became the inspector general of the post office. He became the inspector general of the post office and was persecuting people. He bragged about how many people usually women, committed suicide after facing federal prison for marital sex guides that they sent through the mail for helping couples have. They started to finally push back on him when he was trying to get art removed from galleries from famous artists who had painted partial nudes, or you started. This is putting the drape over the statue of David kind of stuff. Like, oh no, there's a human body part we can see. It became censorship very quickly, because of course it was to begin with. It wasn't until 1983 that Miller versus California, if I'm remembering this right, was overturned it. And one of the things that overturned the being able to send things through the mail and contraception information through the mail and that sort of thing. And one of the justices at the time who was looking at it said, you cannot, there's nothing, we cannot have a law that limits the American citizens' access to education or to information, limits it to the reading materials to that appropriate for a child. Right? We can't dumb down the information that people are allowed to have access to. It wouldn't be right. And that's a right decision. But it took like 100 years for them to get there. And so I feel like that decision could have been made correctly the first time, but maybe you're right. Maybe they do look more to the political will of the people than I think that they would need to.
Should gay marriage have been legalized way sooner than it was? Yes.
Should it have ever been illegal?
Right.
Yeah.
But it took public pressure to make it happen. In fact, we had to illegalize it a bunch of places before that freedom was given. It's very dumb. Anyway.
But yeah, I basically tell people I'm from California. We don't have those laws there. And then in the back of my head, there's this yet. One election can go the wrong way now, and then that's it. But I mean, you know, like, I feel also like, especially having been here in Europe where everything's on, it's literally everything is awesome all the time. America's got so many things wrong already. Like the way they handle everything from housing and healthcare, education, wealth disparity, all of it. Now women's rights, prayer in school, soon LGBT community marriage rights. Like, yeah, wake up. This is your country. This is how it's been going. The overriding thought is, who raised these people on the other side of all of these issues? Who raised them? Who has taught them that any of this is acceptable? And how come they don't look at outcomes? One of the states where they're about to have the trigger law that's going to allow abortion already has some of the worst outcomes in child mortality. Already has
that doesn't matter.
A defunct foster care system. Already has all of the issues that they've ignored that they're going to add fuel to in doing this. Who raised them? Who educated them? What world are they? What fantasy land are they making decisions in that is so completely devoid from the reality that the rest of the world is living in?
It doesn't matter. Their concern is getting votes so that they can be paid by lobbyists. That's all that matters. That's what this is. It's a polarizing issue. It can bring people to the polls. That's it.
Well, we'll see how that works out. But
yeah, well, so this is the other problem then, is that, like, I need to call every friend I have, every friend and relative before the next election, say, did you hand in your ballot? And for those of us that are really, truly freaked out, now is the time to make sure people vote. If you have money to spare, donate to organizations that can support people who are looking for care that they can no longer receive. Do what you can. Do some Googling. There are nonprofits that this is all they do, is compile resources to figure out how you can best spend your limited time and resources to help people in these situations. And we're going to have to do what we can until this gets fixed. And I have to hope and maintain faith that this will get fixed. I don't know how. The court's going to have to get stacked, or there's going to have to be we're going to have to control the Senate and pass a law instead. But something has to happen. I have to hope that something will happen, because this is not the future that I intend to see.
Yeah. California's doing something interesting, which I suggested that they do.
Gavin was listening, I guess.
Gavin listens to the show, by the way. Yeah, he's a big fan of the show.
Hey, Gavin.
But they're doing the thing that I said they should do, which was take that Texas abortion law with the bounties and all the things, where that workaround that when they needed one, to make abortion illegal by not making it the state, but making it so that anybody could sue through some sort of bounty hunters funding system. They're doing that for guns in California. And what's interesting about it is you could very well see, then you're like, okay, hey, Supreme Court, who you like more? Which one of your lobbyists? Which one of your special interests, Congress, do you really care about? The guns or the abortion thing? Because they both either will stand or not be able to stand, right? You can't have, we're going to decide a case like this in one state, and I thought they should do it right away. I actually, the idea I have for it was that they would have to shoot it down because it's guns and they don't want any bans on guns apparently, because that makes people like
that liberty is way more important.
What is the outcome? What is the outcome that you're looking for? And all of this stupid
money from the
thinking.
NRA. That's what you're looking for.
But it can't be. That can't be enough, can it? Just money from the NRA. I think they're broke anyway. What's the end game of having unrestricted carry access to guns skyrocketing? So again, we're gonna have to do this one day. One day we're gonna have to sit down and do a show that is just showing outcomes of these policies in places where they've been implemented and show what the statistics are. Because I don't think people realize the rate of teen pregnancy. I mean, I think it should be obvious, but pointing to Tennessee and showing the rate of teen pregnancy that's highest in the nation after outlawing sex education, showing the rates of suicide going up in states that have increased gun ownership and less restrictive.
Well, let's do an election show.
We should do a preview. Give it a little bit of time.
Like the week before the election night.
Yeah. You don't like this book, that book, or the other book to be in your school, huh? How's your educational system's outcomes as it is? Oh, they're terrible. Well, maybe you're not the one. Maybe you should model yourself after a state that's doing really well by its students and not try to come in and continue to mismanage your state. And also, everything you could look at is something like welfare.
I'm still on, I think. I think Justin left, not me. Yeah, it's me. It's not me, it's him. I'm gonna remove Justin for now. Well, here we are. Oh, here we go. He's back.
I think I dropped out there. I got so upset.
You got so upset. You shorted everything out.
I shorted out the Wi-Fi.
I can't talk about this anymore. I'm getting too upset. It's very difficult to live. You don't have to live here right now. It's very difficult for me to wake up in my stupid bed and go on my stupid run and make my stupid breakfast and go to my stupid job and eat my stupid lunch with this stuff going on. So
can I give you some words of encouragement then?
I guess
you live in a state that has the majority opinion represented in its politics. You live in a deep blue state and in a city that also, even within that deep blue state, is one of the deepest blue cities in that deep blue state in a lot of ways. Not anymore. I know it's so.
No, I don't live in San Francisco anymore.
Oh, I was going to say San Francisco, but the point is, you're probably as if not more progressive state than most of Europe or anywhere else. Anyway, California is going to prove that its policies work and are effective and are better. When we do California, we'll just call the whole thing California versus, and it will take on a bunch of states.
Yeah, but Justin, this is all based on your assumption that the reason I'm bummed is I'm worried for my own personal self.
No, it's not. It's not. It's like I get what I get why, like, the people in those red states have been dying from poverty, worse health outcomes, higher suicide rates, higher murder rates. It's been bad for them all across the board already and is now going to get worse. I feel you. I feel you. I do. However, California is a seat of power in the United States, unlike most other states, and is going to push back and is going to be fighting. And the way that they fight is going to affect change in other states. It's always been. You look at everything from the environment to labor laws and everything else. California has really pushed that envelope for the rest of the country and will continue to do so. So I think continue to act.
There's usually the California standard and the Texas standard, and you're allowed both for a lot of things.
For a while, until people realize this is ridiculous, and then the California standard becomes the thing.
Hasn't worked for textbooks for the last 100 years.
This is true.
This is my other problem is, sure, maybe it'll be better in 5 years or 20 years, but how many lives are going to be irreversibly changed or
generational?
Damaged,
it'll be
destroyed?
generational. It'll be generational hardships. So
how many people are going to die because of this?
So midterm election.
My heart.
Midterm election. It's less than 5 years that these changes need to be codified by a Congress and a Senate that has that majority that can get it done. That's what you need.
And then they need to actually do it, is the thing. So that's the piece that scares me. Is that once it's how I have some hope, but how many times have you voted for an issue and then somebody gets into their seat and they go, too risky, and then they don't do what they said they were going to do? And this is something where we as a people need to be loud and make noise and make it clear that this is something that they cannot mess up the follow through on. This has to be followed through on. They have to keep their secrets, and if they don't, they need to hear from us immediately.
Yeah. I completely agree. I completely agree with that. And it needs to be sustained. People need to stop forgetting. Every once in a while, I guess they don't win the popular election, so it's a little bit like I'm accusing them of getting it wrong, even though they continue to get it right by not voting in a national level Republican. They just keep getting in from this electoral scam. But you can't let this is what they said they were going to do. Stop letting them in. And I feel it's also like this is also part of the problem of being a Californian. It's like I don't understand why. Don't understand like how.
It's because it's a rigged system. That's why. They're not even really winning. The gerrymandering is so insane that it's almost impossible for them to lose.
Yeah. Term limits on Supreme Court justices. I think that's a great idea. Actually, there was, I don't know where I heard this, but there was this idea that if it was a 12-year, is that right? Was it a 12-year or 8-year term? I can't remember now I have to do the math to figure it out. But basically the idea was every time somebody won the presidential election, they got to put in a Supreme Court justice. They get one. And that person would do their 12 years, but then, the next election cycle, somebody'd be out and somebody'd be in. And it was something I can't remember exactly how it worked, but the idea was it's constantly evolving and people are constantly being
somebody can't end up with 3.
And one of them stolen, which also was not enough of a fight when it happened.
Certainly
like,
not.
oh, well, they said it. The word shall was in there and not should have to, so I guess they can do. What did you think was at stake? The Democrats Party still seems to be playing by like, well, we'll go in. They're policy wonks.
Yeah,
They're going in there
they're
procedural wonks.
they're playing by different rules. That's the problem. We're playing
They're
by
playing
different
by
rules. That's
rules.
on either side, and yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And the other side just doesn't care and is hitting every nuclear button possible.
Just think about lifetime justices. Just think about, would you let like think about just like a bunch of grandmas and grandpas. Would you let them tell you what to do with your body? I certainly wouldn't.
Yeah, there's going to be a generational disconnect there, isn't there?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, we ran a presidential election with, a couple of 70-year-old
We
white
certainly
men.
did.
Again, hey, that's the direction our country needs to go, Grandpa. Which, although to be fair, when it's in when it is in terms of criticism, like the right has demonized Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi. Those are terrible people. Those are like grandmothers. Those are grandmothers. You're like, your biggest enemy is grandma. And then they go after AOC. It's kind of interesting. They only seem to pick on women. What is that? What is that, right wing? Why are you always demonizing women and grandmas?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a cyclical conversation now. Why are we where we're at right now, demonizing women? Anyway.
All right. Now that you're angry and can't sleep,
yeah.
Say goodnight, Blair.
Good night, Blair. Say goodnight, Justin.
Good night, Justin. Oh, it's morning, though.
Good morning, Justin. Good night, Internet. We won't be here next week. We'll see you in 2 weeks on July 13th. Have a good week without us. Stay safe if you're in the United States and you decide to celebrate. I don't know why you would, but if you do, hold on to all 10 fingers. Okay? Don't set off any fireworks while holding them. And don't drink too much if you're operating fireworks. Okay, love you, everybody. Bye.